Childhood obesity can be caused by a variety of things. One large factor is actually the environment they are living in and growing up. Children across the United States are growing up in different cultures, homes, and socioeconomic statuses. These factors can all affect general genetics, access to food, and the quality of food that those children are getting. As stated by the National Library of Medicine, in addition to food availability, quality, the shift in the food type, amount, and pricing is also relevant to the obesity epidemic. Children mostly eat what their parents are going to provide to them, and the parent is going to get something that is going to be easy to access. This usually means that food is not as nutritional as it needs to be. This can also be seen as depending on things like fast food to feed your children, or buying easy-eat meals, or even frozen foods to heat up in the microwave. There is also the fact that obesity is very probable to run in a family. So poorer areas that have higher rates of obesity are more likely when they start having families to have obese children. A child with one obese parent has a 50% chance of being obese. When both parents are obese, their children have an 80% chance of also being obese. This is a statistic that is noted by the UCSF Benoff Children's Hospital. So areas around the United States have a higher rate of obesity just because of the people and community that is surrounding them. The lower the economic status, the more probability that a family or child is going to be obese themselves. And it's usually not dependent on just a simple household, but actually dependent on the entire area of the neighborhood. According to the website Scientific Research Open Access, Walter et al. Studied 4 common feeding styles seen in the development of childhood obesity: emotional feeding, instrumental feeding, promoting an encouragement to eat, and control overeating. Here we can see that sometimes childhood obesity is just coming about even before solid meals are given to that child. And this could be due to bad habits from the parents. So if a parent decides that they're going to give their child food just to keep a child quiet because they're being too noisy, that creates a bad habit for the child to just be getting too much food overall. Another bad thing would be giving a toddler sweets when that child does not need sweets to calm them down or to make them happy in a difficult situation. So childhood obesity is unfortunate for children and is hard to reverse, which is why it is so important for a parent or parents to really pay attention to what they're offering their little ones and to make sure it has the right amount of nutritional value.
About genetics and how they contribute to childhood obesity. So first, according to the CDC, most genes that are responsible for obesity are not going to be inherited, but there is one gene that is going to be inherited, and it's the MCR4 gene, which encodes the melanocortin-4 receptor. If this gene is affected, it will leave the child extremely hungry and lead to overeating and will eventually lead to obesity. Next, we are going to talk about the occurrence that could lead to childhood obesity and genetic variations. So according to the study by the Genome-Wide Association study published by the CBI, around 250 genes are associated with obesity. The primary one is the FTO gene that lies on chromosome 16. It is the most important because it carries the highest risk for the obesity phenotype. The FTO gene regulates energy homeostasis and food intake. If there are changes within this gene, then it can cause decreased activity and promote feeding and obesity. Genetic variations also contribute to obesity because they influence the functioning of our metabolic pathways and centers for appetite. These variations will influence our insulin resistance, dyslipidemia, inflammation, hypertension, and lastly, our ectopic fat deposition, which is primarily in the liver. And these are just some of the markers for obesity. Lastly, we are going to talk about how the energy balance can be affected by genes. So also according to the CDC, the brain is the regulation process for your food intake in response to signals received from fat tissues, the pancreas, and the digestive system. These signals are sent by hormones such as leptin, insulin, and ghrelin, and the brain will interpret these signals and make responses about whether to eat more or less food. If the genes are in that are responsible for these signals are changed, they can affect the activity, which could increase the risk for obesity.
Hi, my name is Alexa Dreyer, and today I'm going to talk about the importance of nutrition and how it affects childhood obesity. First of all, did you know that the number of children with childhood obesity has continued to rise over the past 2 decades? Obesity in childhood poses future and immediate health risks. Poor nutrition can lead to a variety of problems such as excessive weight gain that leads into obesity. Childhood obesity can turn to be a precursor of many health problems, starting from type 2 diabetes all the way to heart disease. It's essential to provide your child with proper nutrition to help him or her establish good eating habits that will last for their entire lifetime. Some things that we can do to prevent childhood obesity can be to eat your vegetables, your fruit, and your whole grains that we incorporate into our diet, to also have low fat and non-fat milk for your dairy products. Limit the sugary drinks and sugar consumption, limit saturated fats, and also choose lean meats, fish, poultry, lentils, and beans for proteins, and most importantly, drink your water. This next one is really important in any cafeteria setting, all the way from kindergarten to 12th grade. These students are going to have this present in their diet. So we have our school meal standard limits. The first one is access to water throughout the cafeteria during breakfast and lunch. We have to have that so that students have free reign for water. There must be vegetable choices weekly, including legumes, the dark green, red, orange vegetables. Every school breakfast must offer a full cup of fruit or even, depending, maybe a vegetable. Students are required to also take at least 1/2 cup of fruits or vegetables with every breakfast or lunch. And all grains that are offered must be whole grain rich, so that means 50% whole grain is present in the bread or any grain that they are presenting that day. Meals cannot contain added trans fat, and no more than 10% of the calories can come from saturated fats. Our last one is that every school meal offers at least a cup of fat-free or 1% milk, and any flavored milk must be fat-free.
Wow, there is so many options tonight in the cafeteria. I gotta go take a look. Oh, that looks pretty good. That looks great. Wow, look at the cheese on that burger. The tendies, the fries. Guys, I could never say no to dessert. This looks so good. Oh my gosh. But it's not good for me. It's so bad for me. I don't need this. But thank gosh for the salad bar, because that is gonna make me feel the best, and I'm gonna eat that tonight.
So to wrap up the topic of nutrition, I'm just going to talk about some statistics that we've had found over the years. So the first one was in the U.S. that 41% of children and adolescents are overweight or have obesity. The second one is 1 in 8 children of America live in households without consistent access to adequate food. So we got to make sure in our school system that if we have kids eating the school lunch, that they have access to all of the different food groups to meet their needs. Students who eat school breakfast have shown to achieve 17.5% higher scores on standardized math tests. They also attend 1.5 more days of school per year, which is awesome. So make sure that we get our food in our bodies, because that's what fuels us, and make sure we're doing it right so that we can start off our life without obesity and just feel happy and healthy.
As many of us are well aware, childhood obesity rates have drastically risen within the past few years. It is said that 1 in 5 children are obese. And this is due to the fact that we are consuming too many calories and not exercising enough. When we're not burning off all the calories we've eaten, we're going to gain weight. And this is contributing to the obesity epidemic. Even just 30 minutes of moderate exercise per day drastically reduces the risk of disease. And if one wants to maintain weight or lose weight, an hour of exercise is recommended. While exercise can be a great tool for weight loss and weight management, it's not a cure for all. Meaning that if we are still consuming too many calories, we're going to gain weight even with exercise. So it can be an important tool, but ultimately diet is the most important thing. All exercise programs should consist of a warm-up of at least 10 to 15 minutes, about 20 to 60 minutes of moderate or vigorous exercise, and a cool down. While like exercise can also help you to lose weight or maintain weight, it also has other numerous benefits. Exercise releases endorphins, and it can drastically improve your mood. I know, like, when I exercise, I always feel a lot better afterwards. It also decreases anxiety and depression. It improves body image, and it improves your overall health by regulating hormones and decreasing your overall body mass. Common misconception is that exercise has to be boring, but it doesn't. You can lift weights, you can jog, you can do jump rope, you can go biking, you can go on a hike, you can go on a walk with friends. All of these offer numerous health benefits.
Prolonged obesity in childhood causes a multitude of health-related complications. The extra weight puts an increased pressure on developing systems. The systems include the cardiovascular, endocrine, pulmonary, and the musculoskeletal system. The first system includes the cardiovascular system. Blood pressure and cholesterol increase, which also increases the risk for heart disease. 70% of obese children and adolescents between the age of 5 to 17 have at least one risk factor for CVD or cardiovascular disease. Next, in the endocrine system, they have an increased risk for type 2 diabetes by 7 times in comparison to a healthy child. This increased risk is due to the amount of insulin-resistant substances. Other complications include the pulmonary musculoskeletal system. Within the pulmonary system, breathing problems such as asthma, sleep apnea, and obesity hyperventilation syndrome may occur or even worsen your symptoms. These are all caused due to a mechanical overload and inflammation within the respiratory tract. Inflammation is caused by a diet that is high in fats and sugars and is low in nutrients. The final system that is impacted is the musculoskeletal system. Every pound of weight adds 4 pounds of pressure to the spine and joints. So think about this. A person who is 200 pounds overweight adds a total of 800 pounds of pressure onto their spine and joints. This prolonged extra weight and pressure on joints can cause osteoarthritis and discomfort. Outside the human body systems, obesity during childhood impacts other aspects of their life, including their psychological and psychosocial status. This may include anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, social problems, bullying, and lower self-reported quality of life. All these issues continue to compound on top of each other. Overweight children are 40 to 50% more likely to become overweight and obese as adults and cause further health complications. Rebecca will continue to elaborate on the complications of obesity that carry into adulthood.
Being obese during childhood affects the current child and the child also later in their adult life. We develop a perception of food and health from a young age, from the time that we are born. The family we grow up in impacts our eating habits. The parent or guardian's food choices and their relationship to food impacts the child's holistic view of food. When we're in the womb, the woman's food choices has a big impact on her early taste preferences. According to an article titled Early Taste Experiences and Later Food Choices by the NCBI, prenatal exposure to different foods and exposure continued through breastfeeding sets up our taste preferences and palate for what we are more likely to find appealing and eat later in life. The study mentions children usually prefer foods that are high in sugar and salt over those that are sour and bitter tasting, such as some vegetables. Preferences for salt and the refusal for bitterness can be modified through early repeated exposure to flavors in amniotic fluid, the mother's milk, and solid foods during complementary feeding. These flavor preferences serve as a basis for what we like or dislike. This gives an understanding of why obesity might be an issue for those that were not introduced into healthy foods in utero through breastfeeding or throughout their upbringing. People who were obese in childhood are also more likely to be obese as adults. And according to the Health Policy Institute, the probability that an obese child will become an obese adult increases with age. Obese children younger than 3 years old are generally at a low risk for obesity in adulthood, but more than 1/2 of obese children over age 6 become obese adults. Obese children ages 12 to 17 are even more likely to become obese in adulthood, and between 70 to 80% of obese adolescents will remain obese in adulthood. There are many problems that childhood obesity can cause later in life, and according to an article titled Childhood Obesity, a Lifelong Health Risk by the NCBI, childhood obesity is associated with an increased risk for diseases not only during youth but also later in life, including diabetes, arterial hypertension, coronary artery disease, and fatty liver disease. Importantly, obesity accelerates atherosclerosis progression already in children and young adults. This is in line with the overall concept that obesity causes premature vascular aging. It is important to understand that obesity later in life is not just caused by one thing. Obesity is a multifaceted issue that can have precursors starting as early as in utero.